So the first step that you start off with is obviously finding a canvas that you prefer. You can find them at Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Target, any place that has, arts and crafts. You'll be able to find different types of canvases. There's burlap canvases, there's white canvases, there's raised canvases that I prefer to use, and there are also just flat canvases that are similar to a notebook. So once you find your ideal canvas, they come in a huge variety of sizes. Choose one that you like, and what I do is I set my canvas out and I bought a ton of paint to use in various colors. So whenever I choose what color I'd like to use and what type of canvas I have, next is my choice of paintbrush. So I just prefer to use regular paintbrushes, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, anything like that. So with those paintbrushes, usually if I'm doing letters or just basic manuscript, I prefer to use an angled brush. But if I'm just making designs or drawing a picture or something like that, I'll use a paint marker, which are really good too. After I figure out the colors I'm going to use, I have obviously a color scheme, so I try to stay within 3 or 4 different colors. That way it's not too bright or too in there in your face. So after I have my colors on my canvas, I like to go on Pinterest and get ideas off of similar ideas that I'm planning on making on my canvas. So if I'm doing a last name canvas, what I'll do is I'll type those in on Pinterest and I'll look at other people's ideas, and hopefully that'll gravitate towards me and I'll find a way to incorporate those ideas onto my canvas. So once I've looked for different ideas, I always have scrap pieces of paper beside me, so I kind of jot down what I'd like to do and how I want it to look, just so a rough sketch of how I want my canvas to look. And once I do that, I begin with drawing it. So if I'm doing a last name canvas, like I said, I'll kind of trace it with a paintbrush without putting paint on it, just so I can kind of gauge where my letters are going to go, where my designs will go. That way I have an idea of where I need to place each letter, how big I need to make each letter, things like that. So I began with painting my first letter. I try not to use a very thick paintbrush, because if you use a really thick paintbrush, then your letters may end up too thick or too wide, and you don't want that, just because you have to kind of gauge where you're gonna put your paint, and it always doesn't work out how you want it to. So after I do that, I just go with the flow, and if I mess up, I don't make a big deal out of it, because I'm not Van Gogh, I'm not some big creative artist, so I just kind of make it my own. If I mess up, I try to, add some little flair to it, or I'll add like a little, I don't know, I guess just anything that you can kind of get your eyes off of the mistake. So that's the other step, is just remember that you are not Van Gogh, and it's okay if you mess up a little bit. Just, if I use a white canvas, later on I'll go on and touch up any white pieces, but that's another step. So I write my last name how I want it. So once I'm done writing the last name, I'll go back and touch up any places where the paintbrush didn't, get all the way through with the paint on the canvas. And then once I'm done with that, then I'll go through, and if I have any stray marks that I don't want, if I have a white canvas, then I'm lucky, because I can just use a white paint mark or a white paint and just kind of edge up those places where I messed up. And even if I painted my canvas, pink or purple or whatever, if I have extra paint left on my paintbrush, I'll just kind of swipe it on there and try to get the mistakes as minimal as possible. That's just my idea, is just to kind of get them as minimal as possible. That way there's not a huge margin of error, just, slightly. That just makes it unique, I think. So once I'm done with that, I let it dry. Depending on how big and how thick I put the paint, how big the canvas is and how thick I put the paint, it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half to dry. So if I'm in a rush, if somebody wants their canvas right away, I just take a blow dryer and I blow dry it. I make sure not to keep it on one spot really long, because if not, it'll burn through the canvas. I've already done that, and it was not very good. So after I blow dry it, that takes about 5-10 minutes. It's not very long. I kind of do like a cool shot, just that way there's not always hot air on the canvas, and there's just mild air. So – after I dry that off, I look and check, make sure that there's nothing else I wanted to, I make sure not to keep it on one spot really long, because if not, it'll burn through the canvas. I've already done that, and it was not very good. So after I blow dry it, that takes about 5-10 minutes. That way there's not always hot air on the canvas, and there's just mild air. So fix. And I also have to remember not to be very harsh on myself, because it's gonna be mine, it's unique, it's not gonna be perfect, and that's okay, because it's something I'll put in my house. Or if I made one for one of my friends or something like that, they know it's not gonna be perfect, and that's not what they wanted. They wanted, the uniqueness and the quality. So I have some Mod Podge spray that you can find at Walmart, and it's like a matte finish, and so I just spray that, a couple coats on there. I kind of wave the canvas to dry, and once it's waved dry, I just kind of sit it up for a little, about 10 minutes before I take it down, and, press my finger on there to see if there are any wet spots. And if there are, just let it dry for a little bit longer. So all in all, making canvases are very easy. I mean, you just really need to get a canvas, some paint, brushes, and Pinterest or Google, whatever you like to use. Anything really works. I mean, if you're really super creative and you can think of really cool ideas in your head, then props to you. But personally, I have to kind of get my creative juices flowing, so I use Pinterest a lot to see, to get ideas from. So, I mean, it's just very, very simple, and just the biggest thing I would suggest to anybody making canvas, if this is your first time, is to remember that it's not going to be perfect, and it's okay if it's not perfect, because it's going to be unique. And I cannot emphasize that anymore, because you shouldn't be very harsh on yourself. I mean, we are not artists. I mean, I'm not an artist. I don't know if you might be, but I'm definitely not an artist. So I try to keep that in the back of my head, that if, maybe my letter was crooked, or maybe one letter was a little bit wider than the other letter, I had two E's in a last name and they didn't match up perfectly. I mean, that's okay. I think that's what adds character to the canvas. So in all, I would say that making canvases is very simple. I mean, it's very, very simple. And I would just say have fun with it. Nothing too extravagant, and don't make it harder than it really has to be. So if you try it, let me know. I think that'd be really cool if I could see some work everybody did. So that'd be awesome.